Hello, this is Mr. Huber. In this video, I'm going to go through an answer key for the timed Schoology quiz on solving trig equations. I'll go through the problems in the order I've got them. It might be a different order than the ones you saw, but again, these will be the same problems that are just reordered for each student. So these will be the same equations and problems you saw, but maybe not the same order. The first one was solving trig equations. And actually, the first five I'm going to do are solving trig equations, and the directions for all of them were to solve for values of theta between 0 degrees and 360 degrees. So that's the directions we'll follow for all these solving trig equations. Where again, our goal is to get the trig function, a single trig function isolated by itself, equaling some ratio, and then figure out what angle it would be that would give us that ratio. So in this first problem, we've got sine theta we want to get by itself. So we can solve this like we would any other type equation, where we can use some algebra skills to get the sine theta part by itself. And next, if I would divide by the square root of 2, I have sine theta equals 1 over the square root of 2. I need to rationalize that. Okay, I need to multiply by root 2 over root 2. And so that's going to give me sine theta equals square root of 2 over 2. All right, now this is where I need to figure out what angle measures, what theta values would give me that ratio of square root of 2 over 2. So I need sine. Sine is a y value, like y over r, which means it's just the y value. So I need a y value, because over 1 would be square root of 2 over 2. Over 1 would just give me square root of 2 over 2. So I want to know what angle measures have that. That's a reference angle of 45 degrees. It has a y value of square root of 2 over 2. And since this is a positive ratio, sine's positive in quadrant 1, so 45 degrees, and quadrant 2, which is 135 degrees. So we'd get 45 degrees and 135 degrees as our theta value angle measures for equation number 1. Let's look at equation number 2. So number 2 was the equation 2 cotangent theta sine theta equals 1, right? In this problem, we've got two trig functions there, cotangent and sine. So what can we do? Well, we could recognize that cotangent is the identity cosine over sine. And when we multiply that by sine, it's like sine over 1, the sines are going to cancel. So this would simplify to 2 cosine theta equals 1. And then if I divide both sides by 2, I would have cosine theta equals 1/2. All right, so now I need to know what angle measures have a cosine ratio of 1/2. So this is a reference angle of 60 degrees, where the x value would be 1/2. And we're looking for angles where cosine is positive. Cosine is positive in quadrant 1, so 60 degrees. Reference angle in quadrant 1 is 60 degrees. And in quadrant 4, cosine is positive, which is a 300-degree theta angle for a reference angle of 60. So my answers for that second equation would be theta is 60 degrees and 300 degrees. Okay, let's look at, move this up here, sorry. Doesn't seem to want to slide up. There we go. All right, so we're going to look at number 3 then. Okay. And for number 3, we're going to have the equation cosine squared cosine squared theta plus sine theta times sine theta minus 1 equals 2. All right, so we need some algebra work here to distribute this sine into the parentheses. So we're going to have cosine squared theta plus, then sine times sine is sine squared theta minus sine times 1 is just sine theta equals 2. You know, we're trying to simplify this to a single trig function. We've got cosine and sine in there, but hopefully we can recognize that this is one of the Pythagorean identities. That's just 1. Sine squared plus cosine squared, or if you switch the order when you're adding, order doesn't matter. Cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1. So I can replace that with its identity equals 2. And then I can subtract the 1 on both sides, and I'll have negative sine theta, don't forget to bring that negative sign down, equals 1. So then sine theta equals negative 1. All right, so we'd have sine theta equals negative 1. So that's a y value of negative 1. That's at 270 degrees. So that's where theta would be 270 degrees. Okay, we want to recognize that that's a y value of -1, so on the unit circle that'd be at the point 0, comma, -1. All right, and then we're going to go number 4. Okay, for this equation we had -5 plus 3 cosecant squared theta equals -1. All right, so we're trying to get that cosecant by itself, so I can add 5 to both sides. All right, I have 3 cosecant squared theta equals 4. And then I can divide by 3. Cancel that out. So I'm going to have cosecant squared theta equals 4 over 3. And now I need to square root both sides. So when you square root both sides, you're going to get cosecant theta equals plus or minus, the square root of 4 is 2 over the square root of 3. Don't forget the plus or minus there. And cosecant, we want to work with that by recognizing its reciprocal is sine. So this is the same as sine theta equals plus or minus the square root of 3 over 2. And now we can work with that because we should know our sine ratios. And that's the y value, square root of 3 over 2. That's at a reference angle of 60 degrees. And since it's plus or minus, we need to have the reference angle of 60 degrees in all 4 quadrants. So theta is going to equal 60 degrees, 120 degrees, 240 degrees, and 300 degrees. It's all 4 of them because we want to know where sine is positive and where it's negative. So that's all 4 quadrants are going to be covered. Okay, so let's look at number 5 here and final solving trig equation from this particular quiz. So we have cosine theta sine theta minus 2 cosine theta equals 0. We want to recognize here that we can use some factoring. Okay, so if we can factor out cosine from both terms, we would be left with this particular equation. All right, and then when we have factoring set up, we can set each factor equal to 0. Since the factors multiplied together equal 0, we can use this then to say where would each of these factors be equal to 0. All right, and cosine theta equals 0, that's where the x value is 0. So that's at 90 degrees and 270 degrees, 0, 1 and 0, -1. And then over here, if we add 2 to both sides, we want to know where sine has a value of 2. It never has a ratio of 2. Sine will never have a ratio greater than 1 because it's y over r. Okay, y over r, that's over 1. We'd be looking for a y value of 2. There's never going to be a y value of 2 on the unit circle. That doesn't happen. So these are our 2 angle measures, 90 and 270 degrees. Okay, so those were the solving trig equations problems. Then there were a couple others that were non-trig equations dealing with the 6 trig functions. So we can slide up as far as I can right now. So we'll do number 6 here. Okay, number 6 asked for the exact ratio of, not cosine, cotangent, of -225 degrees. I wrote a theta in there that we need. The theta is the -225. Okay, -225 degrees. So cotangent -225 degrees. So -225 degrees, if we want to recognize, that's going to be right around here, right, with a reference angle of 45 degrees. Okay, so reference angle of 45 degrees in quadrant 2, that's this point here, that's going to be square root of 2 over 2 for the x and the y. 45 degree reference angle has x and y as square root of 2 over 2. Cotangent is x over y. So the x and the y are going to be equal to each other, which means it's going to come out to 1. Then we need to recognize that this is in quadrant 2, where cotangent is going to be negative. Cotangent and tangent are negative in quadrant 2. So the ratio for this would be -1. Okay, cotangent -225 is a ratio of -1 for an answer. And the last one we'll do, number 7. So this gave us a trig ratio of secant. So secant is 13 over 5 in quadrant 4. And we want to find the ratio for tangent. Okay, so secant, right, is r over x. So r over x equals 13 over 5, which means we could solve for y by doing 5 squared plus y squared equals 13 squared. And y is going to come out to 12 if you solve that. So we have a y value of 12, and tangent is y over x. So y 12, x 5. We need to recognize the quadrant. We're in quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 has a negative value for y. So this would be negative 12 over 5. Don't forget that negative sign, right? If we're in quadrant 4, this point out here, okay, that has an x value of 5 and a y value of negative 12. All right, so that's where that quadrant part comes in necessary. All right, so that's walking through the different problems we saw in the quiz. If you need to go back and look through any of those and look for places if you made mistakes and you still have trouble understanding what was going on with them, reach out to me and let me know. But hopefully this helped go through what the correct procedure and answers were for each of the problems on that quiz.